ice cream while you and me repeat. This bittersweet heat is suffocating. I'm waiting and always hesitating. Kryptonite desires set my heart afire.
Men, women, legionnaires and embers, welcome to Burning Questions. And this time, for the first time ever, a part 2 to last Saturday's episode with Augustus Martis. So Augustus, as a refresher, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Of course. Hello, my name is Augustus Martis. I am a Roman demigod, son of Mars. I hunt monsters for a living. When I have some free time, I play some video games and DM for my friends. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going good. We hung out a bit yesterday, and now we get to continue with the burning questions.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the rest of the questions are. The first few were so, deep that I was taken aback. I was surprised.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because we here in Burning Questions really strive to like push the boundaries of what is inside these heads of the VTubers, you know?
Of course.
Okay, well, without further ado, we can go back to the question that was actually that probably should have been a lot longer, but is good for this time, which is of course this one, which is, do you have any kids and now or your past life, and have you probably met one of your descendants by now?
So, yes, I do not have any kids right now. So this incarnation does not have any children. However, my previous incarnations have had children, plenty of children actually. Not so much so that I have a prolific family line or anything like that, but there have been situations, specifically, there have been recent times I have met my own offspring in a reincarnation. Wow, I am getting more and more blurry. I'm sorry. I think I'll second. Let me kind of shake this off. See if I can.
I think the Mythos Hunters connection is not going well right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's hit and miss down here. I keep telling them we need a better internet connection, and they keep saying that's not in the budget, which I mean, is really, I've seen where the budget goes. This is definitely not true. However, so specifically, my World War I incarnation had an estranged child that he was not aware of, that I met as my World
Your wart?
World War II.
Oh, okay.
Reincarnation. So like the estranged child that I had in World War I met my reincarnation in World War II. And it was so I don't remember all the details, because again, you know, the way that my flashbacks of memory work, it kind of comes and goes in different situations. But specifically in this one, I distinctly remember, interacting and actually taking orders from one of my previous incarnations' children. So because my World War I, so his middle name was Octavius.
Okay.
So that's one of the ways that is the easiest way to distinguish between my different incarnations, is to find which middle name they have, right? So Lupus is my current middle name.
Wolf,
Octavius
right?
was my that's actually so my mother named me after the Wolf of Rome. And that's also, so sometimes my mothers are aware of who my father actually is. Sometimes they are not aware. So sometimes I have some very plain unassuming middle names. They always end up giving me, Augustus and Martis as,
Your
like,
first and last name? Yeah.
Yeah, but my middle name is always changing. So it's kind of funny that, I'll have middle names like Octavius and Lupus as, my World War One and two and current iterations. My World War Two middle name, James. Augustus James Martis. Not exactly a noble name, but here we are.
I mean, it's unique, I suppose.
It set me apart from the rest. That's for sure. Hey, tell you what, let me restart this connection really quick.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, what were you saying about your kid? I mean, I'm sorry, not your kid. Your name.
Yeah, so well, it ties back into the whole kid question. So my my Octavius. So I'm just gonna go by the middle names, right?
Yeah.
So World War One Octavius had an estranged child with a English woman during World War One. And that child went on to be an officer in the British military. And during World War II, James, middle name for that Augustus incarnation, actually served under his own child.
That's weird, but also makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of the things. There's a lot of intricate loops that occur whenever you're stuck in a reincarnation cycle.
I suppose it's you have, well, as long as you remember who your kid is, you won't accidentally like fall in love with one of them, because that would be really weird. Let's be honest. That might happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that could happen, especially if I die close to when they were born, right?
Yeah.
Because I could literally immediately reincarnate and only be like a year or two younger than my own child, right? But as far as I have memory of, I've never had that happen.
Do you know Futurama? The show?
I do, actually.
There was
My Own Grandpa.
Yeah, that
episode.
one.
Yeah.
So
luckily, I don't do any time traveling, so.
True. But okay, let's just these hypotheticals. So what supposedly the way that would like make this a lot harder is somehow you end up becoming an ancestor of, let's say, Genghis Khan. And
Go ahead.
Yeah. You're an ancestor of Genghis Khan, which means that Genghis Khan is your descendant.
Yeah, so that's kind of a luckily there's no European individual that are as prolific as Genghis Khan.
Fair enough.
I mean, that in and of itself would have been a quite a fearsome hurdle to cross. Though, if you, interestingly enough, I don't know if you have ever heard about this, but Richard Lionheart, like, I want to say it's like 85% of all Welsh, British, or I think Anglo-Saxon period, like individuals, like 85% can trace their bloodline back to Richard Lionheart.
Wait, why though?
Well, so that's interesting. There's a lot of theory about whether or not it is false genealogy. People trying to make connections to that royal line that weren't actually there. But it's just because between his mother, Eleanor, him, and his two siblings.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of off branches and place. So it just, if you look hard enough, you can trace back to that point, that many years back.
I could see that. But yeah,
So So yeah, as far as I'm aware, none of my previous incarnations were very prolific. Let's
So
say.
far.
So far, I mean, I guess there's always the future, right?
I mean, if they, when they do end up finding about each other, you know why they killed you.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, James was a almost like James Bond like figure after World War II. He did a lot of spy work in the early 50s, early 60s,
Sure.
and so like I guess there could be a lot of little James offsprings running around out there that my current incarnation is not aware of.
It there are plenty of possibilities. I mean, like one of them could be like a Have you seen JoJo?
Yes, I'm aware of Julius.
Okay. It could end up being like a Gianna Giovanni type situation wherein it's like they have your DNA due to like other circumstance, but they're not really your children, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I've talked before about my half siblings.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is there are half siblings running around out there.
Oh, definitely.
And I have come across them in multiple lifetimes, some of which I'm more familiar with than others.
Like the World War II one.
And huh?
Like the World War II one.
Yep, like that one specifically. But it's kind of funny because since Mars's offspring are always drawn to battle,
Mhm.
it is not uncommon for me to meet, half siblings on the battlefield, whether as allies or as enemies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, honestly. But it would be kind of cool, just like seeing every child of Mars just on the battlefield, but like all as one team, and just wrecking the entire
Yeah.
enemy squad.
Well, so there have been times where, specifically, anytime that Rome, when Rome was still an active force,
Mhm.
when it not Italy, to clarify. So, for instance, right, sometimes people would be like, "Well, how come Augustus wasn't on the Nazi side since
Mussolini.
Exactly. You have to understand though, Italy does not speak for Rome.
Yeah.
And so
They
just
tried
because
to and they failed.
yes, exactly. And that's one of the things. Like now, that being said, there was again a half sibling that fought on the Nazi side because of being born and raised in Rome.
Yeah.
But obviously, my father favored me in that situation, which I'm not my father's favorite child, but I am one of his favorite children. I brought it up last time that there does seem to be a bit of caginess towards speaking about my previous incarnations, and I don't know if that's because of his if he's ashamed of some of the things that previous Augustuses have done, or if it's he feels bad that his feud with Jupiter has caused my reincarnation, because yes, I was used as an scapegoat for what was occurring in that battle, but there was a lot of other
Factors.
Olympian
Oh, okay.
politics involved there, because whereas, and I talked about this yesterday, or not yesterday, during the last interview, where there is a lot of more cut and dry hierarchy in the Greek pantheon.
Yeah.
Mars outstripped Jupiter, and vice versa. Jupiter outstripped Mars at different points in Roman history, and that is in part what led to this political intrigue occurring on Mount Olympus. That as a byproduct, Jupiter, and this is one of the things, like my father is much more cut and dry with his, he's a lot less underhanded than Jupiter is. If he doesn't like you, you're gonna know, and if Jupiter doesn't like you, you'll find out when something bad happens to you, not because he told you. So, but yeah, the situations with my offspring is that luckily I've never been against one of my own offspring, but my half siblings I have definitely ran counter to on a few occasions.
Fair enough.
There has been a situation where I distinctly remember about 7 or 8 of my half siblings
Sorry?
together. 7 or 8 of my half siblings.
Oh, okay.
You have to, yeah. So my father was much more prolific in his own right back in the Roman days.
Yeah.
Now he's a lot more dormant, and that could be the difference between true Mars and Mythos Mars, right?
Okay.
True Mars was a much more powerful force in the world, as any faith deity is versus a Mythos deity. So that could be part of the reason why, and I can't say for certain. It's hard to say because these things are still not fully understood even by the directors of the Mythos Hunters, which are I alluded to before, almost like O6 Council from the
of the
SCP
SCP
Foundation in a lot of ways, right? They're not all immortal, but there are a few that are immortals that have been with the Mythos Hunters for centuries at this point, and they know a lot more than they are willing to share with the rest of the organization. Now, why they aren't willing to tell us some things, I'm not 100% sure on. In fact, it's kind of a point of contention. I often will bump heads with my higher ups because I feel like I'm being kept in the dark. And this is something that they're aware of. It's not like I'm, spilling tea outside of things. And, I've made these complaints known, and they've told me that they understand the complaint. They just aren't willing to change the situation. So I'm like, all right, and they know how I am. If I have an issue, I'm going to speak out about it. So they know that I will bring this up any chance I get. But in this situation specifically, the higher ups seem like they know more about the faith mythos split than they are allowing the rest of us to know.
Okay. Yeah. I think of course they do it for like how should I say, they do it for security reasons obviously, but there has to be
So I have a theory, and this is something I can't confirm, but I think part of the reason that some of them are immortal and some are not is because I honestly believe some of them are actually faith driven and not mythos driven. That is not something I can confirm, but I think that that's part of the reason that they don't allow for more research into the power of faith versus the power of mythos.
one of them is Jesus.
Well, so right. So let me kind of I kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was during the interview or after the interview.
That was during the
you
interview where
spoke
you
about.
discussed
It
about
was?
like
Yeah. So there was a portion of the Mythos Hunters, because like I said before, the Mythos Hunters as an organization solidified, I will say, in the mid to late 1700s, right?
Okay.
So before that, there were those who were like the Mythos Hunters organizations.
Okay.
So we discussed before that, there was an Augustus active during the Crusades.
Yes.
He was sort of part of the Templar. So the Templar did have multiple sects. One of these sects, and this is not confirmed, but I have suspicions because of some of the things that one of my directors and how he has spoken in the past. I believe that the current iteration of the Mythos Hunters could trace its lineage back to a Templar sect from the Crusades. Specifically, and that's why I think some of the directors might actually be, tied to faith and not myth. And I fear what could occur if they deem mythos too dangerous for their own
power,
own well-being.
Yeah.
because they're not like mythos beings and faith beings are not like warring or anything like that, but they are diametrically opposed. Um, just by the nature of one is a thing of imagination and curiosity, and the other is a thing of unquestioning loyalty. And so those two things run counter to each other by definition.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it also like boils down to like how it's perceived in media. So supposedly like one of the weapons that the Mythos hunters could use really is just media. Like for example, they like what you can do is like what you're probably gonna be doing is like releasing comics about yourself, right? Read comics or books, it's gonna boost your power because more people will like believe these stories or at least admire these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a entire branch of the Mythos Hunters dedicated to media relations, believe it or not.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, they are that. So there's a need to know basis. Do you know what need to know means?
Yeah, I kind of got that.
Yeah, so need to know basis inside the Mythos Hunters, where if you don't belong to a certain department of Mythos Hunters, you are limited on the information you're allowed to know about other departments. I am part of the Hunters. So there's the Mythos Hunters, and there are inside of that the Field Operations Department, and those are where the Hunters work. That's where those that actually go out, fight monsters, hunt down, study, do things like that. So.
Yeah.
Operations and research are the two closest tied together departments out of all of the Mythos Hunters. That being said, the other departments are much more, how you say, clandestine. They don't want the other departments to know about what they're doing.
So kind of like secretive?
Yes, super secretive, to the point where it's like almost like they are actively working against each other sometimes. It seems like, right? So like it seems like especially when it comes to the media relations departments, like, so it seems like a lot of times they are working directly counter to the research department. Like they don't want the research department to know certain things, and I don't know enough to say like, hey, this is why they're doing it. It all makes sense if you look at it from this point of view. But there is definitely some things where I've drawn some conclusions, because I've been with the Mythos Hunters in this incarnation for 8 years, and so I know everything I know from these 8 years.
Yeah.
And I think I might have been assassinated in a previous life by the Mythos Hunters.
What do you mean? Like how?
I
why?
think that one of my that's the $1 million question. I don't know, because due to my imperfect knowledge of my previous incarnations, I don't know why they would want me dead. Because I'm kind of like the ideal. Well, no, I guess not, because I do question their motives, and I do kind of push back on some of their decisions. So I guess I'm not the perfect soldier by any means, but I do good work, and I work hard for them. So like the real question is like, why? Yeah, why would they want to take out a previous incarnation of me, right? What led to that decision? And that is, I think, a very important question that I have not yet found the answer for.
Well, considering your history, I am assuming that one of the council members is your ex-wife, maybe.
Possibly. So there is a director that she is very what's the best word for this? Morose around me. She seems like anytime I'm around, I don't want to say she gets depressed when I'm around, but she definitely always has this sense of um, not even longing, more along the lines of uh, she looks at me as if I'm not myself. She looks at me as if she is always seeing a previous incarnation of myself. Because um, while there is differences between every Augustus, right? Like
Yeah.
we all look slightly different. There is definitely a strong through line. Like we carry a lot of our father in us, and that's one of the things. Like being a quote unquote favored child of Mars comes with you always end up favoring your father a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In those situations. So that being the case, I think that she definitely sees a previous iteration of me whenever she looks at me. So
I suppose we just have to wait for the story behind it, huh?
yeah, and so that's something I'll discuss more in depth with you offline.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's move on to the next question.
Mhm.
This was actually what I was thinking about because due to like reading up on your thing, and it starts with, do you love your followers, the people part of your legion?
Oh, absolutely, I love Legion. There's two different legions.
Sure.
There is the Legion, which is also known as the First Legion,
Mm-hmm.
which is the department, or not the department, the Field Operations Team 03, LE03. That is their code name is First Legion.
Okay.
So the way that the structure works is that every Mythos hunter, every senior hunter is in charge of a field operations team.
Okay.
That field operations team is named and is aesthetically stylized around that senior hunter. So to become a senior hunter normally takes around 15 to 20 years.
Mhm.
I made it in just shy of 6. Well, just over 5 actually. It was closer to 5 years than 6 in this incarnation. That being said, it's because I do have some unfair advantages when it comes to this situation. Having your previous incarnations doing a lot of the footwork to get you where you need to be, right?
Yeah.
So like I made senior hunter much faster than most people do, and so the thing is, the First Legion is the only Mythos Hunter field operations team that has been around for centuries at this point. Because every time I die, there is a senior hunter placed in charge of them from among the hunters of that field operations team
Until you
that
come
holds
back.
it down until I come back. And the thing is, a lot of times, whenever I rejoin the Mythos Hunters, they are people that knew my previous incarnation and will at this point they're pushing 60 and they're ready to retire and they're like, thank God you're here, I've been waiting for you. I'm like, sir, I'm sorry, I don't even know you. And they're like, let me tell you about who you are, kid. And they will sit me down and talk to me about my direct previous self. Now unfortunately my current iteration did not have that student mentor ability with this incarnation, because there's this stopgap between James and Lupus, right? There's this stopgap. Again, I don't know, I don't know what occurred in that time period, whether I just wasn't incarnated or if that incarnation rested. And because there are time periods where there are Augustus Augustus is born that do not go through the curse loop. It's whether you consider that a blessing or a curse in and of itself is debatable, I guess, right? Because if you are born for something and you cannot fulfill it due to your situations, right? Like if you have this internal drive that says I must do this but I can't, isn't that a really depressing life?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, and so I don't know how many of my previous selves were born into a peaceful lifestyle, and they like who knows? They might not even known why they were depressed or why they couldn't find, their calling in life, but they spent their entire lives just like wanting more and wanting to do something that just wasn't possible, you know?
Yeah, definitely. There's just it. I suppose it sounds like someone who's missing a part of their soul. I suppose.
Yeah, I think actually that's probably the perfect way to word it. Actually, they had there is a part of them that they never got to fulfill.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, going back to the question, that was your first legion, right? You have another legion.
So the First Legion is the name of the field operations team in the Mythos Hunters that I lead.
Yeah.
Then there's the Legion. So I guess there's actually three legions.
Oh,
There's
no.
the Legion, which is what I call my followers on Twitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so those are people that anyone who follows becomes part of the Legion. Anyone who subs is considered a standard bearer. Standard bearers being those that carry the arms into battle and sort of lead the charge, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So that being the case, I have my standard bearers that really carry me forward. And I absolutely love my followers on Twitch. They are, how to put this, the reason I keep doing the Twitch game despite the protest of the Mythos Hunters. Because the Mythos Hunters, I've said this before, do not want me to do this. And I choose to do it anyways because of a couple of reasons, but one of which is my followers, my legion. And the third and final legion is tied to my father and Rome. There is a sect that is not tied to the Mythos Hunters at all, that I'm aware of right now. Though my knowledge of them is limited at the moment, but I definitely get flashes from my previous incarnations. It is, and this is seeing and investigating more information on them right now, because it's something that is kind of tickling the back of my mind. But this legion, and in some ways, I would say that it is the legion that the first Augustus led in Rome.
The descendants.
Again, so the descendants of the first Augustus's legions, because while he was not a praetor, he was the praetor in everything but name and title. He for all intents and purposes led that legion because the son of Jupiter that was in charge of that legion was an absolute shitbag, for lack of better terminology. He was not a good leader. He did not actually care about his people, and so a lot of the responsibilities and leadership fell on Augustus, and there was like this internal fracture that led to that legion carrying on as an organization long after Augustus died. So
they all didn't get slaughtered like when that.
No.
Okay.
So the Battle of Thunberg Forest did not lead to all of them dying. Luckily, in fact, it was part of Augustus's final stand that allowed for a good portion of them to retreat and find safety. Now, if you look back on historical records, it will tell you that the Roman forces were completely wiped out. The survivors, were barely any, and that is true. Except for the fact that there was essentially a secret group that withdrew in time to get to safety because of Augustus's sacrifice, and that sacrifice is kind of like not. I don't want to say deified Augustus, like the first Augustus, to them. But in a lot of ways, it has. Like they don't like pray to him or praise him or anything, but they definitely hold him as a shining standard of who you should be as a person, so to speak.
So
right?
the Cult of Augustus, essentially.
Essentially, yes. That's actually the best way I could word it. And so I think, and again, I'm still researching this and trying to reach back into the historical archives of the Mythos Hunters. But I think this group has run counter to the Mythos Hunters on multiple occasions. And so I am in the process of trying to find out who these people are and why the Mythos Hunters are trying so hard to keep me from finding out more about them.
I suppose only time will tell, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the idea.
Well, anyway, let's move on to the next burning question.
Mhm.
What are your opinions on the several stories of the Olympians having sexual shenanigans? Like Zeus turning into a goose, a bull, an ant at one point, a swan, a vulture, and of course, such.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? I don't yuck anyone's yums. That's kind of my approach to most things. I will give Jupiter shit every chance I get. And so while I do, let's say, ink shame Jupiter, that is because of Jupiter, not because of the actions necessarily in and of themselves. Except for like the fact that he has definitely raped women in multiple instances, and that shit's not okay. And that's one of the reasons I will bring up the goose thing on multiple occasions. Because as a swan, he raped a woman as a swan, and he is not happy about that being brought up. In fact, he for lack of better words, he fucking hates it. That one, he got caught doing it, but also two, he did something so abhorrent without, I mean, not justification. That's not the right word. Without the
consent.
Oh, well, consent, yes, but also it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. Like, he ended up raping the woman, but the whole story fell apart from there for not only him, but for everything, right? And so, so that being the case, he absolutely hates that story being brought up, which I do it every chance I get because of that very reason, right?
I suppose Juno hasn't stopped giving him shit about that, huh?
Oh no, absolutely not. And funny, I don't know if you know about Juno and Hercules.
Right? Oh, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as Juno is often portrayed as a bad person, I think she's justified in a lot of her actions. Now, that being said, she does often hold Jupiter's sins against his children, which I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
But she's actually favored me quite a number of times. And so I've received Juno in multiple incarnations. Because one, my mother is always a very upstanding and very honorable woman, which I think is part of the reason that it always ends up with Mars, interacting with her to begin with, so to speak. That's kind of what drives that initial interaction.
Okay.
But I can't say for sure. I'm not my father, right?
Yeah.
But not only that, but also my mothers are always loyal to Mars, and they live out the rest of their days still loyal to him, regardless of that interaction. Like whether he can be around or not, they always are very understanding and loyal to him. So Juno really favors that, and then because of that, like one, she favors me as a kind of a snub onto her husband, which I understand, right? Because like Juno is often, we'll say, mishandled by by Jupiter.
Yeah.
And so like I 100% get where she's coming from there. Um, that being the case, I do benefit from that grudge.
Fair enough, because you are always the one who's like against all of the nasty things that Juniper's doing.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So as I'm, and that's I can't tell you how many fucking so Poseidon, sorry, Neptune is definitely the number one source of monsters that I have to deal with on a regular basis, right?
Mhm.
Uh, because Neptune has the most monstrous.
Yeah.
Now there is some argument to be made that that's actually Jupiter's fault. Nothing confirmed, obviously, but there is definitely some indications that Jupiter, who is a very fickle and arrogant god, did not like how powerful Neptune turned out to be, so he kept cursing Neptune children to be monstrous in nature.
Okay.
That's why you will see that Mars, Jupiter, their offspring are much more human in nature versus Poseidon's, regardless of who the interaction is with. But while I do end up fighting more of Neptune's offsprings, the hardest fights are always against Jupiter's offspring.
Like, who are we talking here?
So no one of any specific like importance by name necessarily, because whereas I am in a state of reincarnation, I am a soul case. I am the only person stuck in this where I am reincarnated so often and like repetitively that like I carry on a torch that started back in the days of the Roman Empire, whereas the people I come up against are just like James, Bulwark or whatever, who is a son of Jupiter in modern day, and he is he's only related to the Jupiter, the Mythos Jupiter, not the true faith Jupiter, right? So like it's weird, right? The Mythos gods carry the grudges of their previous faith incarnations. So like the current Jupiter, the Mythos Jupiter, carries on all the grudges and hates from his faith days, regardless of never having any direct relation to that incarnation of himself, right?
Yeah, I suppose that is a weird state, but there are a lot of how should I say um uh there are a lot of people who just dislike other people for no reason.
Right, that is true.
That is a very common thing that pisses me off, but it just
Mhm.
happens. We can't really stop it.
Yeah, that is 100% true.
I mean, I suppose that is also kind of like in your case, where when you started out, people will some of the younger members were some of the well, I'm using younger, of course, by like saying that
Mhm.
they aren't necessarily. I mean, the older. Wait, younger?
Yeah, the older.
Yeah, older. The
So
old.
some of the older, yeah, they'll be upset that I'm getting like,
Yeah.
what seems like special treatment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're 100% right. And that, from a meta point of view, right? So is kind of a ongoing theme, I will say.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen like this trope happen a bunch of times, like anywhere.
Mhm.
Like people just disliking someone else just by essentially prejudice, right?
It is. In a lot of ways, it is.
I have seen like people cursing someone out just the way they look, their skin, or even just the language they speak, and that's what annoys me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So um, when we talk later, when later in the interview, we'll I'll let you talk to Mars. How about that? And we'll discuss more of that then.
We can discuss the thing with Mars off stream, because I prefer like just to get this Augustus thing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, it's still rather interesting, like the way like some minds work. But regardless, let's move on to the next question. Would you consider your viewers to be practitioners?
Somewhat. So that's actually a very interesting question. So I think that my viewers are on the path to become practitioners.
Okay.
Because so those that can observe my right arm as being gold are in and of itself becoming more aware of the mythos, right? Because to a normal mortal, my arm will appear as just a normal flesh and blood right arm.
Yeah.
So by definition, if you can see my arm as golden, then you are already on the path to become a practitioner.
Yeah, I can see that being well, of course that's like the thing that they need to know, that wherein they know like what is going on with certain events, not necessarily just like being able to see things, because being able to see things could be, of course being able to see things is still a good thing to do. Possess.
Yeah, possess.
But yeah, it's if they're being practitioners, I mean, if they do end up becoming like very skilled practitioners, they could potentially be working for, in the future, working for the Mythos Hunters,
yeah.
or of course your cult.
Yes. Well, so that's actually an interesting concept, right? The Cult of Augustus, aka the True Legion, I need to find out more about them, because I'm starting to see some trends that are making me as to their motives, right? Like why are they doing what they are doing, and what has led to the path that they're on. And I'm curious of this because I'm seeing these signs that while they carry my name, they might
Misrepresent
carry
you.
misrepresent, or I think more accurately, they might be running counter to my current goals.
Okay.
Like what I am trying to do now as Augustus Lupus Martis is not the same thing that Augustus Martis, the original, what he was trying to do, right? And so there might be the situation of like the intent is good, the purpose is good, however, that's not, like, you're stuck in the past.
Okay, I can see why that would be like quite the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I suppose on the bright side, that just requires like more investigating to know like what are their motives, right?
Right, and that's kind of like, I don't want to make any snap decisions. I do want to better understand what's happening before I say, okay, this is the best course to take, because, you know, making snap decisions often leads to the worst possible outcome, and I don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. It's actions without thinking of the future consequences, which
Exactly
has happened a bunch in history.
Yes, especially when it comes to, like, you know, Romans and such.
Yeah. Honestly, my favorite story about Romans still not like thinking of the consequences was like anything to do with Nero.
Yeah, Nero is a very good example. So him and well, Caesar also. So Caesar was a very powerful and very intelligent man, but he was also very self-serving and self-centered.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons, like, people have a very so when people look at Caesar, they always tinge him with their own personal views of those situations. Does that make sense? Like, they always want to attribute their current view with who he was as a person, which is an issue because you can't apply modern sensibilities to ancient civilizations.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, but there's a reason that I don't know. So not me, Augustus, but Augustus, Octavius Augustus.
Yeah.
He is considered one of the greatest men to ever live, and for good reason. If you ever get a chance to, actually, you watch Overly Sarcastic Productions, right?
Of course.
Have you ever seen the one that Blue did over Augustus?
I have not watched that far yet. Augustus Caesar? Sorry.
No, not over Caesar, over Augustus. Augustus Octavius.
I have not seen that video yet because I kind of like stopped watching them specifically just so that I can binge watch like all the shows like in the future.
Oh yeah. So like I like Red's stuff where she goes over like
Myths.
Folklores and myths and stuff.
Definitely.
But Blue has some very, very interesting videos.
Yes.
Too. And, one of my favorite is well, he's had quite a few over Rome. It seems like Rome might be a favorite topic of his, but I mean, a man after my own heart, right?
I'm not sure though. Maybe.
Yeah. So there's a video he did over Octavius Augustus that I strongly recommend checking out. It's very good, and it has a lot of it explains a lot about who he was as a person, and while I am not him, I try to, since I can more easily find out information about him, it's easier to model who I am today after him than it is to model myself today after the original Augustus.
I suppose it makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like the amount of information available for my original incarnation is so sparse. Now, I have come across some documentation from the James, right? Because James, as far as I know, was the longest lived Augustus.
Okay.
He survived the longest after becoming awakened, which means that he had more time to have these, reincarnation flashbacks, we'll call them, right?
Sure.
He lived the longest as a reincarnation, so he had the longest time of going back and seeing what his previous incarnations did, which means that he had the time and the ability to write out a lot more than anyone else. And the Mythos Hunters either destroyed or hid, I'm not sure which, majority of that information, or they're just hiding it from me. I don't know which it is, and I'm kind of scared to find out which it is, because it's going to change a lot about how I view the organization that I work for, depending on which it is. But we'll see.
I suppose like every organization has its dark side, of course, and I know that better than anyone, that organizations can be very detrimental to their original goals at some point.
Sure.
I suppose the few couple examples I can think of on top of my head is, of course, the Banana Republic, that the fresh food, I don't know the name, I forgot the name of the company, that they did.
The International Fruit
Yes. That one.
Not organization. International Fruit Company.
Yeah, that one. Where they decided to essentially like overthrow a local government. Under the guise of, one, protecting democracy, because of course, and two, under the guise of like being able to produce good food for people, but not for the people who are they don't help the people that actually that are working for them.
Yeah.
That, and of course Nestle, who essentially has the same thing.
Yep.
It's just
that in itself is like I think that's a topic to talk to Mars about. I think so just remember to bring that up to Mars at some point.
Oh hell yeah, definitely. Well, anyway, moving on to the next question. We're actually getting on to the end of these already. Well, close.
Yeah.
Okay, next. I'd assume you have to an extent met and talked to some other deities, right?
Yeah, actually. So my current incarnation has met a multitude, and there's tricky words and phrases, right?
Yeah.
For the Mythos hunters, because the Mythos hunters have what is designated a deity, not to be confused with what is designated as a god, right? A god is any immortal other that has gained such a level of power
Mhm.
that they are able to transcend into the godly realms. So this is most commonly, and so far the only reported cases are for those that were previously gods of faith, right? So
Yeah.
Mars, Jupiter, Zeus, Ixolotl,
Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl, sorry, Izuku, like the deities of old, right?
Yeah.
Like capital or lowercase g gods, right?
Yeah.
Capital G god is very different topic, not for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there is a precedence of like, yeah, all the current what is classified and deemed a quote unquote god by the standards of the Mythos hunters are all under that elk, right?
Yeah.
There are deities, which is a classification of other that has become very powerful, very self-serving, and most importantly has become the sole incarnation of a mythological figure, right? So I always like to use Medusa as an example here, right?
Mhm.
So Medusa was not the only Gorgon,
Yeah.
right?
Of course.
There were other Gorgons, but Medusa was a specific
Right.
Gorgon,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So where this kind of becomes an important distinction is the fact that in pop culture, when people say Gorgon, they think Medusa,
Yeah.
right? So now in the current landscape of the Mythos hunters, there is only one Gorgon. It is Medusa, and she is a deity. She is so powerful that no other Gorgon can manifest out of the Mythos, right? She has literally gotten to the point where any Mythos that is generated towards Gorgons defaults to her. She is also in the unique situation where Gorgons are also used in pop culture, like D&D or Magic the Gathering or any video games that include Medusa or include Gorgons, feed her.
Yeah.
So deities as a classification within the Mythos hunters is very powerful others. The Dualahan, right? The Dualahan is another great example of being a very powerful, singular, like quote unquote, the headless horseman.
Yes.
From Sleepy Hollow, has become the deity of the Dualahan. So all things that are interacting with the headless horseman / Dualahan all go to him. So he is a very powerful deity. Now, deities are not immortal. They can die and they can be destroyed. While that is quite an undertaking, and even in my current state, as powerful as I might be, I don't know if I would be able to kill a deity. I think that I probably have a better chance than any other of the Mythos hunters.
But
even then, it would probably cost me, if not my life, damn near my life, to fight and overtake a deity, just because of how powerful those creatures are. Now, so I have come across many deities in my time with the Mythos Hunters,
Yeah.
but I also come across many gods. I have interacted with multiple gods during my time with Mythos Hunters. The difference being that gods, while not necessarily more powerful than deities, are truly immortal, meaning that I could never kill a god in battle, I should say. So.
Okay. I suppose you cannot kill a god in battle, but there are of course other ways to kill a god, i.e. the thing we talked about like last
Yeah,
episode, which is by breaking the what's it called?
the masquerade.
There it is. Yeah,
Breaking the masquerade,
breaking the masquerade.
and essentially by making the world at large believe in that god.
They believe in a god, and that particular god would disappear essentially,
Well, the
right?
problem with once the masquerade of the mythos is broken, the working theory right now is that if that masquerade is ever broken, it would be the end of all mythos creatures. It wouldn't be targeted to just who is discovered, because like think about it this way, right? If the world found out that the god Zeus was real, unequivocally proven to be a real
Being.
entity in the world,
Yeah.
that would automatically make people want to believe in Poseidon
Oh yeah, fair
and
enough.
Hades. Well, if they're going to believe in Hades and Poseidon, it's only a small step to start believing in Jupiter, Neptune, and Hades, like the Roman Hades, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or Pluto. So it's like it's a domino effect, right? So like the working theory right now, and this is all theory because until it occurs, the Mythos Hunters can't be 100% sure what would actually occur. But the working theory right now is if that domino ever tips over, it's all downhill from there, and that is very scary to a lot of people.
Fair enough. That makes a lot of sense though, considering that there are like way too many variables that we had to take care of in those kind of events. But yeah, it's like if somebody believes that a certain godlike being exists, it's not gonna take a while. It's not gonna take a long time between like even if it's like from a different religion, they're gonna think like, what if mine exists? And that doubt can of course proliferate and cause more and more belief, I suppose, in their gods, causing more problems.
Yep. And therein lies the fear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna end well for anyone. Well, at least anyone from your what's the term? Mythos? Magical mythos.
Mythos Hunters, yeah.
Definitely. I suppose I'll also like make the whole Mythos Hunters thing redundant, huh?
It not only redundant, obsolete.
Obsolete, there we go. Yeah. Obsolete. Like no use. And nobody wants to lose their jobs.
Well, yeah. Especially when your job is literally your whole reason for being.
Yeah, right. So anyway, moving on to the next question. Alright, this actually had a two-part question. Like, you had to meet other deities. So, I have to ask something interesting. Who parties the hardest? Is it the Greeks and the Romans? Or maybe the Norse?
So that's actually a very interesting question. So while there's a lot of animosity between the Greeks and Romans, specifically, there is a lot less animosity between the other pantheons than you would think.
Yeah.
Right? You know, they all kind of accept their... Now, there is, of course, some like internal politics and intrigue that occurs. That's always going to be there anytime you have, you know, organizations that are large and powerful working together.
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
But that being said, for the most part, at least on the surface, they are very cordial. They are very happy to be, you know, to work together. That being the case, Bacchus and Dionysus, which I told you before, out of all of the Greek and Romans, they are the ones that are the only ones that don't really bicker. They actually get along with each other, right? They're like old drinking buddies.
The most chill ones.
They are. They are very chill. They are very relaxed. Now, don't confuse that with like them themselves not having like Dionysus, a little less so, but Bacchus is probably out of all of the Roman gods, even Jupiter, Bacchus is the one that I most fear interacting with on a regular basis.
Why is that?
Because his temperamentality is so hair trigger that I never know when he might go off.
Who's a bad drunk then?
Not even a bad drunk. So they're always a little intoxicated, I would say, but like,
Sure.
it's more along the lines of a wounded pride, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter, I can handle because I know he is always mad at me. I know that he's always going to be, and so I can tiptoe around that accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Bacchus, I never know when he's going to be, in a good mood, a bad mood, a vengeful mood. Like I can never know, and thus I always need to be on edge when near or around him.
So they are very volatile, I suppose.
Volatile is probably the best word for it, in all honesty.
Yeah, well, that is really concerning though. Like seeing how I think that's also like one of the things that we have as a species, because I mean like not as species, but like generally beings would rather fear something that is unpredictable to something that is powerful, I suppose.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
I think okay. Have you seen The Boys, the show?
I've seen I haven't seen the most recent season. I've seen all the way up to the most recent season.
Okay,
I'm going to watch it.
That's fine. That's still fine because, okay. I suppose I think the best comparison here is like Homelander to Black Noir. I mean, not Black Noir.
Yes.
Maeve. Let's say Maeve.
Maeve. Yeah.
Because Maeve, she is practically just as powerful as Homelander. Practically, there's some semantics there. Like she can like lift the same things, but she cannot fly and such. Anyway,
yeah,
she is still a really powerful being, but you're not really afraid of her. You're afraid of Homelander not because of how powerful he is, but how unhinged he is.
Yes.
Because you cannot tell when he would like just snap and just like break someone's legs or something.
Right. So hold on a second. I'm going to send you something really quick.
Okay.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
But yes, go ahead and you can keep talking, sorry.
But yeah, I just thought that the whole unpredictability thing is rather terrifying, because of course you cannot predict if someone might attack you or might attack your friend. But on the other hand, unpredictability is also interesting. It's the whole reason why a lot of movies or a lot of shows, they start to flourish, because something unpredictable happens. Exhibit A, earlier seasons of Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Red Wedding, man. No one saw it coming except for everyone who read the books, and like people who read the books are like, "Yeah, don't worry, it's the show's gonna be really good. I promise. Just give it a little time." But hey, actually, can you give me 1 second? I just realized I need to take care of something. It'll probably be like 3 or 4 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay. So where were we? I think we just finished about how, well, of course, how terrifying unpredictable people are.
Yeah, so we're talking about like the fact that I am more concerned when it comes to interacting with Bacchus than I am with Jupiter.
Yeah, pretty much. And it makes sense why though, because
which actually that was a branch off actually of us talking about which pantheon party is the hardest.
Yes.
Yeah. So to circle back to that question, funny enough, the Norse and the Romans typically like to party together. They
Okay.
are both they both take very different approaches to partying. I will say the Romans typically are a little bit more hedonistic than the Norse, but that
Fair.
being said, the Norse are very rambunctious when they party.
What do you mean?
They like barroom fights and kind of having the this could be our last night on Earth. Let's act like it kind of mentality.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
At least you can say that they're fun to be around, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some of my best buds are Norse. There's actually a person that was looking at also streaming from the Mythos Hunters group that is a daughter of Loki.
All right. What was their name again?
I'm not at liberty to say their name yet, but they are. It's a possibility that they'll be arriving on the scene at some point.
Okay, then fair enough. Fair enough.
And if they do, I'll make sure to point you towards them.
Of course. Hell yeah, that'll be really interesting to see. So anyway, moving on to the last two questions now. Actually, first one is, seeing how you have immense power given to you by your arm, and you've already used them for like combat. What are some non-combat things you do with the Fist of Mars?
I mean, besides just like my daily life of like having to function as a normal arm, there's also some interactions that are a little bit more like ease of life, I guess is the way I would put it, right? So like allowing myself the ability to like lift heavy things very easily, just outside of what a normal human could do, right? Like, oh, I dropped something underneath the fridge, just kind of lift
the whole fridge.
Yeah, things like that, right? So I mean, my arm is like I have superhuman abilities to begin with, right?
Yeah.
In of itself, that's part of being a demigod. The arm just allows me to focus more and kind of use it as a point of control, so to speak. And thus, like I can like, especially in battle specifically, right? If I'm fighting, it becomes much easier to gain an upper hand like in a battle while I'm wielding something in my right hand, because it will react faster and stronger than my left arm.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I suppose that's just more of its like why it was used for, is what it was built for essentially, right?
Sort of. I mean, so each incarnation of Augustus will get a prosthesis from Mars, made by Vulcan. Sometimes it is the same prosthesis as the previous, like if both, the 1320 and the 1340 Augustus both had left arms missing, it might be the same prosthesis used.
Oh yeah, definitely.
However, I am the first Augustus to use the Fist of Mars. The most advanced prosthesis that Vulcan has made for an Augustus so far.
Okay, so that's to say that the different Augustuses did not have that kind of special ability, a special prosthesis.
So they all have certain since all the prostheses are made out of Roman gold, they all act as like an amplifier for our demigod ability.
Sure.
Right. So that is normal. However, like my current one, the articulation is much better than any of the previous arms. Right.
Okay. Of course.
So this has not been demonstrated before, but I actually have the ability to break my fingers into 2 separate digits each, and essentially have 10 fingers on my right hand.
That sounds creepy, but okay.
It is. It is. There's a reason I don't use it very often, but the ability is there, and it is there specifically. That was something that came across because Vulcan was like, "Hey, computers and technology are really taking off here lately. Sure, would be cool if you could have extra digits on your hand to articulate, more technology at the same time." It is a cool ability. Vulcan is a very, very good
Innovative guy.
uncle. Yeah, he sure is. He sure is a good uncle. He cares a lot. Uh, yeah, yeah. He's a good dude. I appreciate very much the gift I was given. But beyond the fact that it can break apart into like 10 digits, the arm has a plethora of other things. There is a small amount of shape shifting that it can do.
Mhm.
Up to the point like you've seen the claws that
Yeah.
I routinely carry into battle with me. Those can retract, but they can also pull in and form one kind of
Blade.
not really like not yeah it's a blade, but it's not really like a almost like a dagger length, I guess, or like just about a knife length protrusion out of the back of my palm, or
Okay.
back of my hand. um you know which the majority of the time I wouldn't use that anyways. I would just use the claws, but the ability is there. But also the shield that I use, along with the axe and spear combination I use, are also creations of Vulcan, and those are actually able to interact with my arm in special ways, which the shield I use on my left arm, and is in and of itself does not have much interaction with my right arm, but the axe and spear, like whenever I'm holding it in my right arm, it's almost directly connected to my nerve center, because my nerves actually extend down into my middle arm while it's attached to me. That's one of the reasons it's so painful to attach and detach.
Fair enough.
Because like essentially there is Roman gold nerves that run throughout the arm, so that allows me to have sensitivity in the arm whenever it's attached to me. But those Roman gold nerves have to actually attach to my own nerve centers on my body whenever I attach it, right? I've told you before that I have Roman gold in my spine, for like whenever the shrapnel was removed and Mars fused my vertebrae. So there's some low in my back, but there's also the two vertebrae directly between my shoulder blades that are not fused together, but there's some Roman gold there that actually is the nerve connection that goes into my right arm. So that essentially it's a direct connection from my spinal cord to the right arm. Well, whenever I'm holding my axe and spear, it can transform between an axe and a spear just by my thought. Like there's not a button I press or anything. It's literally whenever I think it occurs. I have been practicing trying to see if I can actually turn it into a sword as well, but pretty much the best I've gotten is like a long bladed spear with a shorter shaft. Not quite got to a sword yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay. I actually thinking about it, seeing how like Vulcan is a very innovative type of person, I kind of like imagine him using like a godly 3D printer and just shove all of the Roman gold into it.
So it's really funny, right? So he is always like, he's using stuff that humans will develop in the next 20 to 25 years.
Okay.
So like he was using 3D printer like technology in his forge in the early 80s. And like I'm not talking like, because they actually had 3D printers essentially in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about like what we would look at today as a good 3D printer. He was already using that back in the 80s. He was using that type of technology though back in like the
much
World War II era.
Okay.
So like he's always and it's always really frustrating for him that humans keep developing, so like we're not catching up to him, but we're getting closer and closer to the level of technology he has. So he's always pushing himself to be a little bit further past where we are, because he himself, and so this is another thing where Hephaestus and Vulcan do not get along at all. The two hate each other.
Okay.
And it's almost like a whole like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates kind of frenemies kind of thing. Yeah, like where they're like they used to be friends, but then they kept having ideological differences and changing how they handle things. The Hephaestus actually, typically speaking, while he is good at also making warcrafts, he is much more focused on crafting things that are non-battle oriented, whereas that is Vulcan's whole shtick. He loves making military technology.
Okay.
That's like his bread and butter.
That makes sense. I suppose that is a really like interesting thing to know, that essentially they get access to things that humans have not been able to use for decades yet.
Yeah, like yet to even discover, more or less become commonality for us.
So I suppose when he does something, we can probably expect the same things for humans to develop.
Well, so that's the thing.
Eventually,
Vulcan, both Vulcan and Hephaestus both are very secretive about their techno layers, so to speak, right?
Yeah, sure.
I will say that I have gotten a small peek into some of the stuff that Vulcan is using. And I will say, because like he uses a lot of technology when it comes to making my prosthetics that has not obviously come out, and the fact that my arm connects directly to my nervous system is a big indicator of some of the stuff he's working on, but also the fluidity of the Roman gold, like the nanotechnology kind of scaling that is used in my arm, makes me very strongly believe that he is working in nerve aperture and nanotechnology right now.
That is awesome. I want to see a picture of that, like just a Roman god working on like really like sci-fi tech essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay, anyway, let's move on to the last question now of the burning questions. Finally, after 2 episodes. So this is a really strange one, but Agustus Martis, sorry, the first one was a high-ranking legionnaire, but not a praetorian, right?
Right.
Does that mean that this, let's say, centurion, or higher than that?
So are you asking like what his rank was?
Okay, don't worry about that.
Is that the question?
No, that's not the question. I was just asking like what rank they were, but that's not actually the whole question. Anyway,
okay.
Being a high-ranking legionnaire, did Augustus Martis own some slaves back home?
Yes. Which was, again, I'm not 100% like happy with how things were done, especially in my modern incarnation. But also the way that slavery was handled in ancient Rome is much different than how people think of slavery now.
Fair.
Right? Like, especially with like industrial slavery, like the way that American slaves were used for like cotton and plantation use and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Back then, slaves were much more like part of your household, but like they didn't have
rights.
Well, they didn't have rights, but also they are essentially, you treated them like what's the best way to word this?
Maids.
Yeah, like maids. Yeah, like maids.
Servants.
Like servants that you took responsibility for.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a maid or a servant that you hired. That was your maid. if someone did something to your maid or your servant, it was your pride and your honor on the line to defend that maid or servant.
Ah,
That
true,
slave,
true.
for all intents and purposes, was like a member of your family.
Yeah.
So, and also, if you ever look back on the way that Roman society operated, like the way that they interacted,
Mhm.
The fact that Augustus even made it to into the position that he was in is actually kind of impressive. Like in all actuality, it was, I mean, very impressive because he was, for all intents and purposes, did not have a noble family to claim. He didn't. He did not have, like, you know,
He was
uh,
self-built.
in a lot of ways, yes. So the thing is that I told you before he had a Celtic mother, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, the issue therein was that his father, being Mars, meant that he didn't have a earthly father to point to and say, "That's my Roman father." Pretty much through a multitude of trials that he deserved to be allowed into the rank and file, more or less an officer position. And it was through actually the whole reason that he was even allowed to to enter into those ranks was because of essentially saving some high level. Well, it was a senator that he saved, but then the senator during that time saw through, because it wasn't the mythos back then, right? It was a
Yeah.
faith based thing. He saw Augustus as a son of Mars and made him a noble family then and there. So the first of the Martis line as a Roman nobility was, and this senator was a favored senator of Julius Caesar, which gave him ears to wear for Augustus Martis and the line of the Martis family.
Okay, I see. That is a really interesting story. I would definitely would like to hear more about how the original Augustus Martis like rose to through the ranks, like starting off from like the lowest point, and eventually like getting to become right before the Praetorian.
Yeah, and that's in and of itself. I will make sure to put you in the loop once it's actually once I have more, because I feel like once I find this Cult of Augustus, they probably have much more detailed records on that information than what I have.
All right, definitely, definitely. Well, I think that is all the burning questions. Did you enjoy your time twice on burning
Uh,
questions?
I would love to be on a third time, man. This is it was really it was very nice to be able to to get out there more information about who I am as a person, but also uh, how the organization I work for works.
Definitely, it's really nice to see like the inner works of not only the mythos but also the organization you're working for and all other related types of things like your past essentially. Well, I suppose your past is like really really big compared to like other people.
Yeah, that's true. I know that, like, whenever you're interviewing most other VTubers, you are interacting with someone who has a history as long as their lifetime.
Yeah,
My lifetime just seems to be much longer than most people.
that's true.
Um,
But still, it was like really interesting to just look into the life of somebody who has not only, of course, obviously been in like the major conflicts, but has seen plenty of things and been to like many places as a different person, I suppose, technically speaking, but still being like the same guy, just reincarnated over and over again.
Yeah, so that's well, okay. So I guess we didn't really talk about this too much, except for the fact that like I can say that I'm not proud of things that previous Augustus have done, but it's weird, right? So like who I am before I am awakened is like there is some commonality between those personalities. However, I always change, not necessarily dramatically. It's not like an overnight shift, but I can always feel my personality and my own moral standings and such always shift to become more like the first Augustuses as the longer that I'm awakened. So because James, the World War II Augustus, because he was the longest lived of the modern Augustuses, he was probably like towards the end of his lifespan was probably the closest to the original Augustus that anyone has ever been.
Okay, yeah, I can see why. It's just there's just so much things that particular Augusta has been through. But I suppose the only time will tell to see if you will go through similar or even more experiences like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I suppose there isn't that many questions from chat. Any final words before we end this?
No, man. Look forward to playing some more Apex with you sometime. Let me know when you're on.
Definitely. So anyway, everyone, Embers, Legions, thank you for coming to Burning Questions. I hope you all had a great time, and I will see every single one of you next time. Goodbye now.
Bye bye.